mesh of many elements compressed down the melting pot of a super futuresque style. The combination of a vocal caress with lungs that gasp for breath from emotional stress with special effects. In a distorted collage, carefully lodged between beats of a rhythmic barrage. It's going down, a logical progression on the timeline. The separation narrowed down to a fine line to blur the edges so they blend together properly.
All right, what's going on, everybody? I am the one, the only, the WOOKIE. No Dan this week, no Ewok. We kicked him all off the show. We said later, Gators. But of course, we have Drazcore. What's up, Draz?
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, it's just Drazcore and friends. You know, not a big deal. New show. It's going to turn to Drazcore and friends, and then me and Jupiter are going to go do Flesh and Blood.
No!
Yeah. I mean, eventually. It's going to happen. We're going to do it on the Patreon. Don't worry, Drazcore. And eventually we'll suck you in, too. Don't worry.
I don't know.
We'll get you in.
I already have a physical form made of flesh and blood. I don't need a game also called this.
I mean,
whereas I don't have any Ember in real life. So
this is true. You don't have any Ember in real life. It'd be weird if you did.
That'd be cool.
What would you spend it on?
More Keyforge decks. Real keys.
Nobody takes Ember, or I mean, not where I come from, anyways.
Speaking of which, I have a bunch of decks up there, Draz, for auctions that are starting at $25. It's like right in your range.
Oh, I've already got some marked that I'm thinking about. So typically what I do, right? Because depending on my mood, sometimes I'll be just like in a mood where everything looks amazing, and sometimes I'll be in a mood where I'm like super picky. So especially if I'm in a mood where everything looks amazing, I will click the heart. And I'll be like, I'll come back and I'll look at it again tomorrow and see if I'm like, why did I think this deck was good? Or
I put a lot of nice decks up there though, for real.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to send you my lists.
Yeah. You should.
My lists are not out in the wild. Believe it or not, I've never sold or bought a deck off of DOK. Believe that or not. I mean, you don't have to
either
believe
direction.
It.
Interesting.
Nope, never sold or bought. But we also have Jupiter. You've heard Jupiter already. What's up, Jupiter? What's up, Jupes?
Hey, what's up?
We're all here,
the other guy.
Yeah, he's just the other guy. He's just here for the funds, for the lulls, as the kids are saying.
Oh,
but yeah, believe it or not, never bought or sold off of decks of Keyforge.
I think there's a lot of people in that boat though. Honestly,
probably. But like, I think I've legitimately, sold 2 decks ever. And I've bought a couple now. I bought one because I was at one point looking for all decks with like my kids' names in them. Like I was gonna have a deck for each child. Like, I was gonna have my son have a name deck with his name, and my daughter. Turns out my youngest daughter, her name isn't available in any decks. And then my wife was like, I want one that says Panda on it, and that spiraled out of control. And then the only other deck, I mean, I guess I did buy a deck from Joker that he had on decks of Keyforge.
Okay.
But I knew not through decks of Keyforge.
Right.
I was just like, what do you want for this deck? And he shot me a number, and I was like, here you go, here's your PayPal. Slapped him on the butt and said, thanks for coming.
Right. So this is a general thing, not like specifically Keyforge. Like you haven't really bought through eBay, you haven't really bought or sold through like Facebook or anything like that. Gotcha.
No, I mean, half the fun of the Keyforge is the opening of the deck, right? And then the other half of the fun, if you're sadistic like me, is the inevitable disappointment that your deck is not very good.
It's fun.
You're right.
To make not very good decks try to do something.
Yes, it is, but typically,
your wife might have been happier if you sold some stuff.
Oh my god, maybe. But I'm gonna tell her. I'm gonna send it to Drazcore, and we'll go from there. We'll talk, Drazcore. We'll talk.
All right.
So, either way, we want to kind of expound upon what we went through last week, right? So, last week we talked about kind of how to go through decks of Keyforge, kind of the numbers we like to look at, but obviously we gave you some of those nuances. You know what I mean? Like high arc, base speeds, things like that. Like things we like to see in a deck that we're going to pull off to the side, but ultimately we kind of all just came to the conclusion that you got to play it. There's no really awesome, like there's no set number. You can just, hit the ink pad and stamp it. This deck's playable. So now we got to play with these decks. So we got to practice with these decks to see if they're anything. Drazkor, I have a deck in front of me. How should I go about, besides just playing it all willy-nilly, how should I go about practicing this deck and seeing if it's any good?
Well, so it's interesting, right? So practice. So I was thinking about this for all of the few minutes before the episode started since we changed the topics. But I was thinking about how there's like two stages, right? There's like the hey, I want to practice this deck because I think it might be good, and then there's like the I want to practice this deck because I think it is good, right? And I think there's like different things that maybe you're trying to feel out through that process. So like initially, I think like I definitely don't have anything like hard and fast like rules or anything like that for initially. But initially, I'm just trying to feel like does this feel like a good deck, right? And if I look at DOK and I see the numbers there we talked about last week, like does it seem like there should be something here? There's not always, right? And sometimes there is, even if the DOK numbers aren't great. But like, does it feel like the deck flows? Does it feel like it's doing enough of the things that in theory it may want to do?
Sure. And I think this is something, I mean, at least for me, not everybody's the same. So to say like, this is something you should be able to find out within the first 2 games, that's not true for everyone. Everyone you, so follow you. You know what I mean? You're going to know, for you at least, however many games it takes, that, this deck either is working or not. I can tell typically, I mean, give me one Chainbound and I'll tell you if a deck's working or not. I mean, I don't think I've ever pulled a Chainbound deck where like somebody goes, I think there's something there.
Well, that's kind of interesting to me because like a good example of that was I was streaming a deck called the Giantess or whatever. It's my Genka Bionite Rupture deck. And I streamed it, and you can ask Joel, like he was watching me, and it's like I literally lost like 5 or 6 games in a row, like just playing this deck because it was like really, really hard to play. Like it was really kind of crazy. But then like through those practice sessions, things started clicking and stuff. And so I did bring it with me to the Aussie Keyforge League, and I played it this week against Rich Ellis, and I was able to win 2-3 pretty convincingly with the deck because I put my work in to learn how to play it. And I think that when you're talking about practice, it really depends on what you're trying to get out of the deck and like what you can see as the potential. It's like I think when I practice a deck, quote unquote, or like for what you're saying, like to test it to see if it's something you should keep or not. The first thing I do is I play it with no brain. Like I just play it with, rush strategy where I'm going to throw things out on the table and I'm going to basically play as fast as I can. And I'm going to see how the deck feels just naturally, right? Like I think that the natural flow of a deck is really easy to like if you play rush, you'll be able to tell if the deck is flowing well or not. Then if it is flowing well and like I'm just barely like losing or I'm winning with it, then that deck is probably pretty good. Like it's something I should probably look into a little bit more and and see how much better I can make it, right? But there are decks where you play them and you're just always off by a little bit. You're always off by a little bit. And like you can't win because you're playing this rush strategy. So now you slow down and you like start to look at the lines and you start to think about the lines. You start to look at your opponent's deck. Like I don't even look at my opponent's deck when I'm actually first testing a deck. I just play. And so like the second phase of my testing always goes into like, all right, let's slow down and let's like start to figure this deck out and see if it's worth keeping because like, I'm at that brink where I'm like competitive, but I'm not winning because like I'm not doing something right. Right. And so I do that. And then from there, like I basically push forward. Either I go, man, I'm losing because of my own mistakes, or am I losing because the deck can't win? That's a big thing, that looking in the mirror and going, did I mess that up or did the deck mess that up? I think that's a huge thing in like when you're evaluating and practicing decks to think about, because a lot of people are not humble enough to look and go, yeah, that was my fault. Like I totally missed the line, or I totally didn't do something right. And it's really hard, I guess, to do in some respects. But I think that's kind of like where I'm at when I play, like when I'm playing a deck and like trying to practice it and stuff. And I'm always trying to evolve the deck and play it perfectly. And if I play the deck perfectly and it wins, then it's a good deck. If I play the deck perfectly and I still get killed, I'm probably going to move on from it.
Mm-hmm. I think that's that is a big thing too. Yeah. Sorry to cut you off, Jasker, but that is a big thing. Like the whole like looking inward, right? Like, did I mess that up? Because I try to run through every possible scenario, especially when testing a deck. Did I do that? Like, was there a way I could have taken maybe a different line and won? Or was it just it just wasn't there? Now, what do you I would say 7 out of 10 times it's the deck, right? But there are those 3 or 4 times where you kind of just got to go, oh, that was a thing that I didn't play properly, and I could have done that a lot better. So for every time, like if I look and say, yeah, no, I could have done that better, I'll probably play the deck again just to make sure if I can, almost pseudo try to recreate that scenario. You're never going to perfectly recreate it, but get in that same scenario and then play it different and see if you get a different outcome. Sometimes you're not going to every time, but sometimes, yeah, you get a different outcome and maybe it's worth kind of continuing with that deck. What you got, Jazz?
Yeah, I agree. I think being like a little bit hard on yourself is good. Not like too hard. You don't want to not be having fun, but like a little bit.
Remember, it's still a game at the end of the day.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. As much as X-Ray tries to tell you it's not about fun, it's about winning. It is actually about having fun.
Well, X-Ray is not wrong either. It is about winning.
Yes, he is.
100%
yes, and he's joking, right, when he says that. Sort of.
I don't think he is.
Winning is
anyway.
fun to him. That's what he's telling you.
It is. Winning is fun.
I don't think anybody hates winning.
Good. This is true. People like to win. But yeah, just being a little harder on yourself and like think about, hey, even if you won, could I have won more convincingly? Or hey, if you didn't win, where did you go wrong? Right now, sometimes it's stuff where it's like, oh, if I had perfect information, I could have done this differently and done something way XYZ, right? And I think that's worth talking yourself through because maybe at some point in the future when you're playing with that deck, it will come to you that, oh, hey, I could well be in this situation and I should do this thing. Or even if it is kind of unknowable that hey, he drew that back again, flipping over his deck on the first drawback, you're at least considering some possibilities and counters to your deck and things like that. And I think building those things up helps you over time get a better and better look at your deck.
Yeah, one of the things too when I'm practicing these decks and stuff is like if I lose, I want to play the same deck and the same person again, like at least 3 times, like 2 or 3 times, if they let me, because like usually if they're winning, they'll stay in play. So like that's great. That's why like my record on the Crucible can get pretty bad, because like I will play the hardest decks for my decks to just play and see, and then like try to figure out my lines, and then I eventually either come to the conclusion like, okay, this deck just doesn't have the tools I need to be competitive, or I come to the conclusion like, okay, cool, I'm getting better at playing this deck. Like Gigantus, like my Genka deck, that was one that it really took me a while to get right, and now I feel like it's much stronger now than it was when I was playing it on stream, because it has so many little nuances that I never thought of until I played it a bunch of times. So when you're practicing decks and stuff like that, it's really good when you're losing to keep playing those tough matchups, because the tough matchups are what really put you through the fire and let you know if the deck is worth keeping. Like it's easy to just smoke somebody that's playing like a crap deck and like, be like, yay, look at me, I'm winning. But I mean, I know that feels good, but like it's really not giving you any value.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when you were talking about a deck, one of my top decks now at the time is Xerxes, right? Xerxes was never, back in the day, Worlds Collide, I don't think it actually got highly rated until MM. But it was a deck I always kept around, and you guys know I'm not a huge fan of AOA, and Xerxes is an AOA deck. But like, just some of the things it was able to do made me know, like, this deck probably is better, and just the way it played, right? It plays a different way. It's a frustrating deck to play, only because of like certain things and like having to understand, like, Swindle to me in general is a very frustrating card, right? Alpha, Omega, Steel 3. But like, you have to know, like, sometimes you just have to do it in the deck. So, I mean, getting to know the deck, and over time, I've learned, yeah, this deck's actually pretty boss. And really, really good. And eventually DOK caught up with it. It's now 80-something. I don't know. But, I mean, it's really good. And it does certain things. Does it have dead cards? Sure, every deck. I don't know if there's a deck out there that doesn't have dead cards. One or two, three,
very few.
maybe. Yeah. I mean, every
even the
deck's going to
best
have dead
have some
cards.
of the yeah. Now, so Swindle's interesting. You mentioned Swindle, so I'm curious. What over time, as you practice with this deck, did you learn about when to play Swindle, when to hold Swindle, when to discard Swindle?
Basically for Xerxes at least, there's never, like, basically you want to really kill your hand, right? So you're trying to make it so it's that your 1 card Shadows turn is actually just 1 card. So it happens a lot because of the Ronnies, and sometimes you just have to hold the Swindle, right? So you will be holding Swindle for maybe 2 or 3 turns.
Okay.
You're probably not going into Shadows, but you might be holding Swindle for a little bit. If you can Swindle, so a lot of the times what it likes to do, because it also has the too much to protect. So they'll get to 7, right? Because they think, or they'll get to 6, and they're like, okay, I'm on, whatever. Like, the whole idea with the Swindle in the deck is frustrate my opponent. It's got double Ronnies. It's got a Brend. It has ways to steal and dis. It has ways to make you lose your mind in Logos. It does have Ember control in all 3 houses. So basically, it's like, all right, I got to 6. I'm not within Ronnie range. All right, dis. And then you hit them with the Schuler. And they're like, okay, well, I'm going to have to go a little bit more because I also have Lash of Broken Dreams. He's got the Lash down. So now maybe I got to go to 9, right? So then, basically that's when you're like, but they don't want to go to 9 because of the too much to protect. And then they go, okay, so maybe you do the Ronnie, or I Brent, it's all very turn dependent. But basically, you frustrate them. Go ahead.
I would say it's also the fact that you've played it so much, which is obvious because you're giving us like this long-winded explanation of it, right?
I have played it quite a bit.
So you've learned the timing, and you've learned like how to play the Swindle in your deck, and that's important because that's the only way you get that is through the repetitions that we talk about, right?
Right. Because basically, Swindle is my ultimate frustration card, right? So I've crafted my hand into this strange-looking monstrosity, and they're like, screw it, I'm going to 8. That way, even if you Ronnie me, I still forge the key. And that's when you drop the Swindle. And it's just more frustration. And if you get to a lot of opponents that get to that frustration stage, now there are people who are cool cucumbers out there that this trick does not work on. There are 100% people out there that this doesn't work on. But then, normally by the time I've hit the Swindle and been like, go back to 5, they're like, screw it. And they ball out, right? They're just like, I'm reaping with anything. There's nothing you can do to me. I am forging a key next turn. And that's typically, because it does have ways to archive, that's typically when I pull my archives and pop the too much to protect.
Well, right, that's interesting, right? Because there's a heuristic that people are used to, I think, that's like, oh, my opponent just called this house. Chances are they don't want to call it again next turn. So maybe I do hit the gas now, whereas because you just played 1 card, right? You haven't massively disrupted what's in your hand, and you're ready for that, which I think that's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it is it's the deck wants to frustrate your opponent as much as possible, and honestly work on their frustrations, because it has answers for a lot, right? So it's got like double Exhume with Ronnie. And nothing hurts more than, like, I just popped my Ronnie with a strange gizmo, so I stole 3 from you. Like, all right, now I'm down to, like, 4 Ember or whatever it is. But then I Exhume and I'm Lock Gateway. And I just stole 6 Ember from you I gave you 1, congrats, but then I, netted 2 off you because of that. Like, it's just, it has its opportunities to just be so frustrating to play against. Because it's just like, and there are some, heavy hitters. There's a Tesmal in there there's things in the deck that have to be addressed. right? They just have to be. And if you don't address them, you're going to be struggling. So, at one point in time, believe it or not, here's a deck that's sitting at 80 something. At one point in time, it was a 68.
Mm.
And I pulled this boy at Gen Con.
Yeah, that's happened to a lot of decks that they've kind of just shifted over time as the algorithm gets more
Gets smarter.
defined, and it gets defined, and he basically has more parameters towards what's good and what's bad. The amount of work that Nathan did for DOK and to do this algorithm is insane. And yes, it's his opinion, and it's like his group of guys that are basically shaping it, but all the guys know a pretty good amount about Keyforge, so that's why it's like still a pretty good place to start with, right? But it's just not the end all. But like the numbers matter, and the things that the data that you get from what they were doing and like how they were updating and stuff like that was truly impressive. So like I've always like been a patron of him. So like it's not just because of the DOK store I get, but like what he did for Keyforge was a lot of work, just like TCO guys, right? Like what they do for Keyforge is an insane amount of work. And it was all in the name of making things better. So that's important.
Absolutely. And I think I found the deck, right? It's El Xerxes the Ruins Imp. That's the one we're talking about.
Yep.
Wookie? Cool. Yeah. Lots of interesting stuff in here. Got the Archimedes. You got the double lab work. You got some shards in here.
Yeah, it's a double shard deck. Believe it or not.
Shard of knowledge. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Double
So
zoom. Yeah.
But if you look at it, just looking at it, you're like, this doesn't look like much. You know what I mean? It doesn't.
I mean, it's got a bit of everything, right? I mean, your artifact control is just your strange gizmo.
Yep.
And that's questionable.
Not the greatest.
Your power is low, but you've got the unlock gateway, you've got the strange gizmo, you've got like lights out, double oubliette, right? You've got a whole bunch of like little things. The shard of pain, right? You got a few things to deal with your
weirdly
low
enough,
power.
it has 2 out of the 3 things that Mr. Jupiter looks for. It's got a couple scaling ember controls. Yeah, it's got TMTP and I am interdimensional graft. And it has, Gizmo would be a board wipe, I was going to say, and it has a board wipe and unlock gateway, but it actually has strange Gizmo, too. And it has a standardized testing? Does it have a standardized testing? Okay.
Yes, it does.
Which doesn't count as a board wipe, but...
No, it's...
More times than not, it kills creatures I needed to get rid of. You know,
It's not as degenerate as I would like, because I do like key cheats the most. But like, yeah, it sounds pretty fun. And like but like when we're getting back to what we're talking about and how to practice, right? Like another thing that matters with practice, and this is something that's interesting, is like who are you practicing against?
Yeah.
Picking up people in TCO, like I know names like because of the KFPL, right? Like so I know like a lot of names and a lot of the people that I run into and stuff, and like I know when I'm playing against a person of quality, like a person that I know that has been playing in tournaments and playing at a higher level and like spiking. And then I also know when I go into games sometimes like I just look and I go, okay, this is a more casual player and stuff like that. It does change my mindset quite a bit. Because if you're just there to have fun and stuff like that, I feel bad if I have a really like crazy deck, like if I'm playing jokes or something. But like at the same time, like I only play in competitive, so like I don't like go to casual and I don't go to beginner to unless I'm playing with somebody that has asked me to play with them, right? So like it's a real like weird feeling for me because like it's like I know the people who are trying hard, right? Like I see them come in, they'll play like their double ultra graviton decks and all these other crazinesses that I don't even know if they own, honestly. Sometimes I just look at it and go, this looks like a net decks. I've seen this deck 3 times today and like with different people, so like what's going on? But it's okay because I don't mind because I'm in competitive to play competitive, right? And like that's a big thing. So being in competitive, I think when you're practicing your decks is very important. But also like if you can find names that you know that people who are competitive and playing high, like it's okay to go into a room with them and be like, hey, Jupiter, what's up? Hey, I'm testing this deck. Could you bring me some heat? Right? Like you can ask them to bring the best deck against you. Like, and that's more than okay. A lot of people just go in, pick a deck and they start playing. And then they say, good luck, have fun and start playing. Yeah. You can have a conversation before you play, like to make sure that you're getting what you want in your matchups. Like, so when you go into a matchup and you just like are completely overwhelmed, like you could have took the time to go, hey, I'm playing a deck that's this sass, blah, blah, blah. You know, I would like to test it against something really, tough, or could you play to my level or whatever. That way you're not getting frustrated playing the game because in all, like Keyforge is meant to be fun and is meant to be have fun and stuff like that. But like, depending on where you're at and stuff like that, like I don't know what casual and beginner even means in TCO. Like
I don't think
know.
anybody does anymore.
I like I know some people get really heated if you play like a 78 SAS deck in casual, like that's competitive and too good. And I'm just like, I don't know about that. Like for me, I think competitive and good is probably going to be in the 80s, right? Like pretty high. But like, and then again, I have decks that are 68 that are competitive, and like if I played them in casual, like I think I still would get yelled at. So like I don't know, but like in the end, like have a conversation before you start the game. That's a big thing, especially if you're trying to practice, because you want to make sure that you're like getting the best out of your opponent if you're practicing and really trying to test your deck. And don't be scared to lose. Like losing is part of it. And like what you learn from the loss is more important than what you gain in a win. Because in a win you just go, "Yep, this deck is doing pretty good. Cool." That doesn't really help as much as it does to go, "Oh wow, there's a pretty big weakness there. How do I play around that? Can I play around that? Do I have the tools in this deck to play around that?" All questions that are very viable when you're looking to practice and looking to figure out how good your deck really is.
And I think a lot of people fear, like, I don't know, and I've heard this before, but a lot of people do have that fear of, quote unquote, losing, right? And it's like, well, dude, it's number one, it's a game. Like, there has to be a winner and a loser. It's not really a big deal to lose. But they're like, but my TCO record. And it's like, listen, my TCO record is absolute trash. You want to know why? Because I'm looking for a deck. Right?
Guess what? You could delete your deck and reset your stats.
I don't even, like, it matters so little to me. Yeah. Right? Like, it really doesn't, because, like, half the time, like, half the decks on my TCO right now aren't even mine. Like, there are decks that I was, like, maybe thinking about purchasing. Or, like, when you get a, I don't even know what to call it, like, a stick up your butt, and you're like, hey, I think Chronophage is the next it thing. That is the next degenerate card. And you just start going to look for Chronophage decks. I mean, sometimes you're like, I want to see if this works. I want to see if that works. Like, normally once I find it, I'm happy. And then that's when, I mean, you guys can come into our Discord at any time. Plenty of people in here. Typically, I go to Dan, or maybe I'll go to X-Ray, or maybe I'll go to Z. I'll be like, bring the smoke. Like, it's time. I've played this deck a couple times. Think it's pretty good. Bring the smoke. And then we see. We just see if it can hold its own. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And you have to be kind of prepared for the sometimes it doesn't. Because more times than not, it might not. Or there's, every now and again, Dan played one of those stupid Gargantodon combos against me the other day. Where basically, like, I didn't have any really good creature control in the deck, and he knew it. And so then he played Gargantodon, so I couldn't steal from him. I'm like, Dan, not the point.
No, he's a good player, and he actually looked at your deck list and figured out how to beat you.
I know, but
who would think?
But it wasn't the point. I'm like, damn it, Dan, that's not the point of what I'm trying to do here. Like,
it is the point. It showed you the weakness in your deck.
It did, but I already knew that weakness going in. Like, he just did it to poke at me. But like I already knew, because the first thing I told him in the deck was, I know its creature control is low, and that might not make it a great deck. I'm interested
you told him to bring the heat. When you say bring the heat, you're asking me to bring jokes. Like, you're asking me to bring, like, Nicodemus. Like, you're asking me to bring, like, the decks that, like, I don't play online for fun or for competitive, because I already know they're good, and I know they're going to make people angry. So when you ask to bring the smoke, like, you're asking for me to beat your deck. Like, so whatever it takes to beat your deck, I'm going to bring that. Because that's what you're testing, right? Like, sure. And again, losing, like you said, isn't always fun, and it's like really bad when they really exploit your weakness. But if you can be exploited that badly, your deck is probably not great.
Yeah, and what's funny is Dan pulled it off like turn 3, and I'm like, Dan, we already knew that the deck didn't have it. Like, I was looking for more of like what I'd see in a Vault Tour, not like I'm gonna pick the perfect deck to destroy you, like that. I mean, but it is what it is. Like you said, I lost. Okay. I had to take that L.
Perfect counter, or did he pick a really strong deck that happened?
No, it was a 72 SAS. It just happened to have the counter that would ruin me. But however, Gargantodon not being able to steal, and I forget what the other piece was, but like basically it wasn't. It was like, you're not going to steal from me. So basically you now have like no Ember control, more or less. Right. You can do some capturing funny business, but that's about it. And you know, they had a big board, so it was a horrible matchup for the deck. Like it was just the apps. Like you want to talk about nightmare matchup? I found it. There's the nightmare matchup. You know,
well, how does your deck beat that deck? Did you ever figure out a path?
It won't. It will never beat that deck.
So you have no removal in your deck whatsoever.
It has an Axiom of Grist, but Gargantodon makes it capture the Ember instead of stealing it.
So you don't have enough creatures to fight into it?
Mm-mm.
Okay, well then your deck
not enough big creatures. That's what I should say. Not enough big creatures. You know, it's got like double Red or Gallum and a Shrix, one Thorough. Like it's all tiny creatures, so it would take me forever to kill a Gargantodon.
Yeah,
because remember they have to come down.
Gargantodon is very Gargantodon is very underrated. Like that card is so good when he shows up.
He is 100% underrated, and I didn't realize how underrated he was until that point where I'm like, it's kind of a gross little combo you got there. Like, and it's a tiny bit degenerate, and I like it.
He doesn't have to be a combo. He doesn't even have to be a combo. He just has to be played and protected. That's it.
Yeah.
But
anyways, so we figured it out. We're going to the next smoke. What else do we need to do to test our decks, guys? Is there anything else we're missing?
Yeah,
I know this might be a shorter episode this week, but like,
I think there's more stuff, right? So one of the things that you are, or at least that I'm trying to figure out, right, is okay, there are potentially some tricks in this deck, right? And I've gotten far enough where I think the deck is good enough, right? Where I think I can win often enough without playing the tricks. But now I need to figure out, like, okay, I've got various combos, I got various tricks, like how hard do I lean into those versus when do I just discard them? When do I not wait for them? When do you, like, all those conditional things that that are important, right? Something like that could be good or bad, like an exile, right? Some decks, there's just not worth trying to get an exile off of much value unless it just happens to fall into your hand at that moment, at the perfect moment. Whereas some decks, you playing a little more heavily can actually be really valuable. So what category is your deck in, right? And playing against a variety of opponents and trying to feel out, like, hey, was I right to have held it this time? Oh, I discarded it. Would I have wished I had it 2 turns later, right? That sort of thing, right?
I think finding out what category your deck is in is like huge. Like I think that's more important than a lot of people think.
What do you mean by category?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about, like, is it a control deck? Is it a? Or am I off base on that?
So no, what I meant there, but we can actually get to your point because that's a good point as well. But what I was meaning there is, if we're trying to separate this deck into, like, hey, for this deck, should I do X with this card or this set of cards, or should I often do Y, right? Where sometimes X is hold it, sometimes Y is discard it, sometimes it's, hey, really work hard to archive or work hard to, force mulligan for it as much as possible. Like, where on the spectrum are some of these things that could give you extra value in the deck on average, right? And figuring out where it is on average, and then over time also in matchup situations, right? Is there certain matchups I really need to lean into this thing, or I really don't care about this thing? Like, these are all things you need to explore as you're practicing.
Yeah, for sure. And another interesting thing too is when you're talking about your decks, right? Like, an important thing to be able to recognize is, like, I know a lot of times we go, hey, there's tempo, there's mid-range, there's control, there's, blah, 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 there's, rush, blah, blah, blah. But in reality, if you're practicing with a deck, what you need to do is you need to learn how to identify whether your deck is the aggressor or is it the counter deck, right? Like, because in every matchup, one deck is faster or more aggressive than the other deck. And by, like, being able to determine which role of style of play that you need to be in is important. Just because you have an rush deck doesn't mean that your opponent can't rush you faster. So like the idea of like knowing your place in the game and like where you belong against the deck list that you're playing against is a huge thing for a competitive player or like anybody that's looking at decks and trying to figure out what value a deck has in a competitive environment. And another thing is there's a ton of leagues out there to play in as well. If you're talking about practice and trying to get tests in, it's a very good idea to take those to those leagues, because even though some of the leagues are quote unquote casual and like they're fun, the people there that are playing are really good. And like they're basically going to be testing things as well. So you're going to get a nice spread and a nice variety to test against and to play against and to see where your deck is. So leagues, all the stuff that Draz was just talking about, like, you know, all the repetitions, all the practice, all the understanding, all that stuff goes into what you need to do to basically practice your deck, get yourself online and get ready for going to a real event, I think.
I would say even I would say your local Chainbound, if it's open. Obviously we do Chainbound here every Sunday.
This is my local Chainbound.
This is my local Chainbound. Chainbound's huge, right? So it gives you 3 to 4 games, right, to kind of figure it out. And you're going to see a pretty wide variety of decks. So, I mean, for me, I wish there was more Chainbound to go around, because I'm like, man, like Chainbound is like almost the perfect time to like go test it. Because a lot of people, you know, that maybe they might not be bringing the best stuff, but they're bringing some good stuff. If you're X-Ray, you're bringing the fire, right? Like I guess X-Ray just said screw it last week and decided to bring the smoke. But like there's like such a great, it's such a great time. Like you get 3 to 4 games, and I'll tell you, pretty much within that 3 to 4 games, you're going to find out a lot about it. And you're going to basically be able to find out in that 3 to 4 games if you want to continue with the deck or if maybe it's not for you.
Yeah. And you mentioned this particular Sunday. This Sunday was interesting, right? Because you had such a diversity of decks out there and people playing for various reasons, right? X-Ray really brought fire, right? You had I think Cloggin brought like a 48 or something silly like that. I brought a super janky, it's like 72, but it is a deck that has like a whole bunch of different ways to make Epic Quest work, but to win it kind of needs to make Epic Quest work. and so I was just like, well, how is this? I wanted to see. I was like, can I make it happen often enough where I could do okay against some of these decks?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I ended up going 2-2 because I got destroyed by X-Ray. And I actually lost to Cloggins 48 because I just needed to draw on the final turn. Like I played, or my second to last turn, I played out, you know, all of my, a whole bunch of whatever other house. And I only had a few cards left in my deck. I'm like, I just need to draw 1 Sanctum card and to trigger the Epic Quest next turn with my archive, and I didn't. So it didn't go well. So that deck was a lot of fun to play, but I was trying to figure out, well, can I make the Epic Quest happen enough where I can get enough of advantage off of that, where not that I'm going to take it to a Vault Tour, but that it's going to, you know, be something that I'm going to, you know, be somewhat competitive with. I think I answered the question is probably not.
Right. But you figured that out. Like you figured that out within the span of 8 Chainbound. So, you know, that's the biggest thing. That's what we're trying to figure out. I mean, my favorite way to play Chainbound right now is bring whatever deck you find laying around the house. I mean, that's I brought a deck I found on top of my no, where did I find? I found on top of the microwave last 2 weeks ago. This week, I brought a deck I found in the junk drawer. Like, you know, it's just that's how I'm choosing. Like,
I don't understand the picture you're painting for your house, Wookie. It's like you're just walking through the house and there's just random Keyforge decks everywhere.
There are.
This definitely explains last week's episode.
Yeah. I mean, but like, you know, like I have some sitting on the red bookshelf that I'm eyeballing for this week's Chainbound. So I mean, yes, I have a lot of Keyforge decks. Yes, they're all over. Do I need to get rid of some? Absolutely. Like I said, I've never sold anything on DOK. And it's getting a little out of hand, and I have a problem, and I need to stop. That's a different podcast. That podcast meets on Saturday evenings at the church. So if you also have a Keyforge problem, we're little to no help to you. So, what else you guys got? Testing decks. I know you got more. Like I feel,
Well, now it's flowing right now.
I feel your energy, and you're just like, I got things to say. Like, just let it out, man. Let it go.
Yeah, so I do want to address something I just said, actually. So I just said, hey, in 4 games, I sort of figured out with this deck. Now, honestly, I had an inkling with this deck. I bought it for pretty cheap. It was like 12 or 13 bucks on eBay, right? And I was like, this looks like fun. I didn't expect it to do super well, but I was hoping maybe it would go more than I thought. Now, I would say to the listeners out there, please don't feel like, hey, I need to be able to figure out a deck in 4 games. Like, I definitely think there are some easier to figure out decks that you sort of have a sense you just need validation or see if you're wrong. And there's some decks that are much harder to immediately see, and you got to try a lot more stuff in order to figure it out. And some of that is, experience, but some of it's just play style or complexity of the deck, things like that. So I think some decks require a lot more to figure out how to play well.
And that's why I said at the beginning, like, I don't think there's any finite number. There's no stamp. I don't think 10 games is the correct answer. I don't necessarily maybe think 4 games is the correct answer, right? Mm-hmm. Like you said, you had a feeling, right? We've all had those feelings about those decks. There are tons of decks out there that I've had a feeling on, and within 4 games, I have realized that my feeling was incorrect. Mm-hmm. But I've had a couple other times where I've played a deck and I had a feeling and I kept at it because I had that feeling. I'm like, I'm missing a piece. I don't know where it is, and that's probably why it's missing. But there's something I'm not seeing here. And
it's funny how sometimes you can have a deck that you do everything you can possibly do with it, right? Like you're trying to get it to work, and you're just like trying to get it to work, and something just isn't clicking with you and stuff. Mm-hmm. So then you like hand it over to your friend, or you give it to somebody else to play, or whatever this and that, and they just start demolishing things and doing things that you couldn't do with your deck. And that goes to speak with personality type and how you play the game, right? Like, and how good you are at basically playing different types of roles and different types of decks, right? Because like there's a couple decks I've had that have been wonderful decks, but like I just didn't like playing them, so I got rid of them. And then I get yelled at by Z because he's like, why would you get rid of such a tournament worthy deck? And I'm like, because it doesn't fit me. No. It doesn't fit me, so I don't want it. Like, that's just the truth. But I get it. Like I get that some decks just aren't, like, style wise, are just not for certain people. And even if you're like the best player in the world and the best of the best, like, yes, you know how to play certain decks, but there's still decks that you're going to favor playing because they fit the natural flow of your game. And the way that like part of being a good like tournament style player is like, you have to go like quite a few rounds or quite a few weeks playing at a very high level against very high people. And part of it is being comfortable. And being comfortable is playing within the type of zone that you play in, like what is comfortable for you. At least that gives you the best chance to win, as far as like to basically get where you want to go. If you're playing a deck that you really don't know, or you're not comfortable playing and stuff like that, that taxes on you in the long term. There's like a physical and a mental draining that goes with that. So I think that's something important to note about decks too when you're practicing with them. It's like, how much fun are you having playing it? Because if you're not having fun, it's going to drain you over the long haul.
Mm-hmm. Well, number 1, you took my thunder on the first portion. Number 2, you're 100% correct. Because that's why I finally made the decision, like, to get rid of Xerxes. Right? Like, after 4 games, I'm spent. I can't.
Right? Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah.
It is a mentally draining deck. Because if you are not on point, you lose. Mm-hmm. You have to make sure you know what you're doing. And you have to do it correctly. And if you don't, you lose. Like, there's no other choice. You just lose. So, like, it's a mentally draining deck. Therefore, like, the reason Xerxes doesn't come out a whole lot is because I really don't enjoy playing it. Because it's like I said, I can get about a good 4 games. Now, I've never taken it to a vault tour because normally after round 4 or 5, you do get a break. So I'd be interested to see it.
By round 4, you're usually out, right?
By me, yeah,
that's
dude,
why he gets a break.
I go O2 drop, man. I don't know what you're talking about. O2, I'm out, like O2 drop. But yeah, but it is a mentally draining deck. Like, it is a deck that you have to understand and pay attention, and you kind of gotta. And I don't like going decks where it's like I need to like view my opponent's discard pile, 100 times because I need to know my next move. And I know that might be just good Keyforge, but it's just too much for me. And by round 4, I'm mentally spent. And I have no interest. It sucks because at that point I'm like, man, I'm not even interested in playing anymore. Like, I'm kind of all done. So that is a big thing.
Yeah, right. You want to be comfortable with the deck. Certainly, practicing it helps you be comfortable because you've seen more of the scenarios that could arise. But it does sound like it's just not quite the right play style for you, right? Just based on how you're describing it.
Weirdly enough, in Magic I was always a control player, but I think that's just because I'm a degenerate.
You're also older now, and the older you get, the less brain capacity you have for these types of things.
Well, thanks.
I'm just
thanks
gonna
for
let
that,
you know, I'm
Jupiter.
45 years old. I've already forgotten like all the control stuff. I just go kill. That's
I mean, that's the kind of when Dan says you just like decks that play themselves, and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, at this point, almost. Yeah, like I'm just tired of like having to focus so hard. I just want to shuffle up and win. Is that so wrong?
All you young card players out there, this is the truth of reality. If you want to be the best card player in the world, don't get married, don't have kids.
No.
Like, just stay young as long as you can, because when you get older, all that stuff goes out the window.
It just oozes out of your ears, and it's over, man. It's fucking over. Yeah. No, I mean, he's not wrong, but like I'm just, yeah, like there are. I mean, I bust it out every now and again because it is fun watching. I mean, I do like. Why do you think I'm after all these Heart of the Forest decks? Because at heart,
because you're a sadist.
Yeah, at heart, I'm still a degenerate. Like, it's just this is a degenerate now that requires less thinking. So I'm good. The only thing that would make me happier is if somehow Keyforge printed a counterspell, and that would be the only thing that would make me happier than ever. So.
I'm not gonna lie. I sit here at my computer playing when I'm playing jokes or I'm playing one of those decks that I like playing that are just absolutely rude. And like when I play with them, I sit here and I giggle to myself and I'm just laughing at the people's reaction to it most of the time because I'm just like, it's just a game. How can you get so angry, right? But like it just makes me laugh and stuff. And I have whatever. And my fiance would always look at me. She's like, "Are you being a jerk again?" I'm like, yeah, kind of.
I mean, I think we all reach that point in any game we play. We're just like, you know what? I kind of want to be that guy today, or this week, or month, or for the rest of me playing. I just want to be that guy.
I just honestly laugh because I think people who get really butthurt about playing a card game are interesting. Like, it's not because I'm causing them pain or anything else. I'm just like, how can you be that vested in the game that like, especially like online on TCO, like how can you be so vested? I can understand getting bad feelings if you're like at the vault tour in the top 4 and you lose or something, right? Yeah, that kind of hurts, right? But you're sitting at home playing TCO for casual fun and stuff like that, and like somebody like beats you bad. Okay, so you either rematch them and try to beat them, like see if you can take on that challenge, or you just move on. Like how can it like mentally like change your disposition to where you get so angry you have to type something stupid or you have to be rude about something? Like, I don't get it. Like that makes me laugh like every time. Like, it's the best joke in the world.
I mean, people get invested, right? And it's part of the reason we have passion around the game and whatnot. But like, I do think there's tactics you can employ, right, to help yourself. Like, one of the things I do is I very purposely, when somebody does something that's like, crazy good for them, or they get real lucky or something, like I'll type like nice or something, like, ooh, that was good, like just to be like, hey, I'm congratulating them. I'm staying positive myself. I'm not letting this like throw me off. I'm gonna acknowledge it because like, yeah, that really just set me back or really boosted them ahead. But then I'm gonna regroup and keep going and give them a little like, ooh, well done, that sort of thing. So That's helped me.
Unless I know the person, like I actually know the person, I've talked to them before or whatever this or that, I don't talk to people because like I don't want to say something that sounds like if I'm playing X-Ray, I'll talk crap to him because we talk crap to him all the time, right? If
It's
I'm playing,
X-Ray. Yeah.
if I'm playing with Joel, it's like, hey, good job, great job, you did good things, right? Like if I'm playing with Rick, hey, good lines, hey, that's cool and stuff, If I'm playing with Draskor, I'm like, oh, come on, get out of here, dude. What are you trying to do? What are you trying to do?
Yeah, what kind of shenanigans you try to pull here?
Yeah, but like I think it matters with the person, like you know what I'm saying. But like when it's a complete stranger that just gets absolutely heated at me, I'm just like, I don't get that. Like it's just weird to me, right? Like community is community. Like who you can talk trash with, you can have fun with, right? Like we have a pretty tight knit in AC, so like we all have our type, right? Like, but it's just like some of the TCO shenanigans that go on. But to be fair though, like out of all the games I've ever played, like we still have the best community as far as like people go. Like they're very, for the most part, friendly. They're very much like willing to play you multiple times or whatever. Like it's very easy to find games that are going to be fun, quote unquote, or worth my time to play. Right. So,
yeah. I got a question for you guys.
All right, shoot, because we're running out of time. But go ahead.
All right. So, do you guys ever practice a card? Meaning, like,
yeah, absolutely.
There's a card that you're like, I don't know if I play that well enough. I need to practice it. Find a couple decks with that card.
Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
For sure. 100%. Like,
and you try you try that card off in different types of decks too, like different styles of decks and stuff to see how it fits and what if it's when it's playable and when it's not playable. There's some cards that are very playable in certain situations that just are not so playable in others, right? Like.
I think I talked about it earlier in this cast. Chronophage.
Yeah,
I thought that was going to be the next degenerate card. I'm like, this card is so degenerate. It's like, I think it's the next thing. And I mean, I haven't found a deck that Chronophage has been dominating. But, I have hopes. Maybe one day. But yeah, I mean,
it's a good
100%.
Card. Yeah.
It's a great card. Either I haven't found a deck that just pulls it off or...
Yeah,
I'm not sure yet, but
yeah.
And since we're getting close to the end, one of the best and most awesome ways to practice your decks and get things, we already touched on this a little bit, is to join leagues like ABR, the Australian Keyforge League, Time Shapers, Swindle, Coat, Kagi, all these places. And you know why it's a good place to go play now? Because the KFPL is offering spots in the KFPL to the top participants in those. So basically, for every 20 people per event that they run now, I'm giving one spot per 20, and if they hit 60, they get 4 spots. And that's the max. That's the cap. But so get involved, find all these leagues, go play in them, and get yourself an invite to the KFPL. These are kind of like the free roll qualifiers for the most part. So like get in there and play and have fun. Play Keyforge. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to promote that. We will still have monthly tournaments in November and December and January for seeding. We will have some last chance qualifier type tournaments that I'll run in January, and then we're looking to kick off in February. So that gives all the leagues times to finish up. It gives us Christmas and Thanksgiving break because I don't want to have a league start up and to play through those months because they're going to be busy for family. So I figured I'll just postpone it a little bit, make it a little bit better, set up stuff, and figure it out from there. So that's kind of a quick update on what the KFPL is going to do. I know it's a little bit of a wait for it, but I think in the end it's going to work out well. So get in these leagues and get yourself qualified.
Yeah. And just get playing. That's the biggest thing.
Play Keyforge.
Just play.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun, Don't take it too seriously. Get your collections into what size fits you.
Or your trunk of your car.
Or the trunk of your Honda Civic.
Yeah.
So
if you are out there listening to this podcast and you have a league that has 20 or more players in it, feel free to PM me on Discord, and I would be more than willing to support your league. Like if there's something in the APAC over there or whatnot. I know the Aussie Keyforge League has a lot of those guys, but I know like in China and like Taiwan, Hong Kong, those areas, I know they have some pretty big leagues. online type thing. So if you guys want to verify, like Andy Mings or whoever the people I know from over there, the Mike Trouts of the world, like if you guys want to hit me up and get some spots for your groups, that would be fine too, because that helps with the APAC scene, because I know that we don't always run tournaments that are conducive to your time slots. So I'm trying to be as fair as I can about people getting qualified for KFPL, and the KFPL rules are going to be really I think easy to work with this go around too. More coming on that, but I think the idea is I want to get as many people from all around the world playing and getting in if they can. So
yeah, absolutely.
I think there's a Polish league too out there that has probably a good number of people. Not tonight. I know you listen. If that's true and you guys want to get some spots, let me know. Hit me up, because I try to contact all the people I do know, but I'm for sure I'm missing somebody.
All right, well, I can check that off the list now. I was just about to go into KFPL and tell you to take it away, but you did it, so yay! But with that, bringing it
1
up,
minute to spare.
Yeah, I mean, we have a few minutes to spare now. But with that, we're going to move into final thoughts. Drascore, what's your final thoughts for this week?
I think it's fun just to practice decks, right? Sometimes I'm practicing them because I want to see if they're awesome enough. I want to practice against really, really good decks with a lot of varieties. Sometimes I just want to bring that weird janky deck and see if it's, good enough to play, not necessarily super competitively, but good enough to steal some wins and have a lot of fun with it. So,
is it a good jank or a bad jank?
Anyways,
Jupiter, what you got for final thoughts?
Well, when it comes to practice for me, I like to start wide. I like to basically play loose and just play everything as much as I can, see what happens. And then as it gets to as I feel more and more comfortable with the deck, that's when I start to narrow it down and play against people I know, play against tougher decks, ask people to bring the heat and stuff like that. So practice is like every day, right? Like every day I play some. So and I try different things. That's why I know which decks I want to keep. I know which decks I like, and I know which decks I open. It's like sometimes I just have decks I don't even play. Like 90% of the list that I have on auction this week is I've not played a single game with any of the decks. I just have too many decks. So get over there and take a peek. That's my last thought.
All right, guys, get out there, play some Keyforge. You can find us every Sunday. I'm going to try to get this right. Dan's not here to correct me. Every Sunday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
Look at you.
Here in the Discord. You got Tuesday and Wednesday are sealed. Sunday is chainbound. And, every now and again, all of a sudden we'll just blast off a random hey, we're going to do sealed. And I have no idea why, but we're doing it. So, obviously keep your eyes peeled. If you want an invite, you can find the invite in the description down below. If you'd like to follow us on social media, we're over at Archons Corner on pretty much almost anything. Do you boys have social media? I never asked you.
On Twitter, for me, I am at KeyforgeL, and I have YouTube and Twitch. It's now Fifth Planet Games is what I've changed both to. So you can find either one at that. Got it.
Drascore, any social media for you? I don't know.
Not really. I mean, I'm on Drascore on Discord. That's about it.
That's if you want to get a hold of Drascore, that's probably the best way to do it. Remember, Patreons always listen ad-free. Me and Jupiter will be doing some FAB content here once a lazy Wookiee gets off his lazy butt and actually does some things. I did play a couple games tonight, so that was super exciting. Jupiter's been playing some games, so the journey has started, and super excited about that. But with that being said, we'll see you guys all next week.
Catch you on the flip side.
Happy forging, everyone.
Taking one out of a lot of see now it's going down. Put it out for the world to see. LP and X-Men to the 10th degree. It's going down. Nobody in the world is safe when we melt down the wax in your record cream. It's going down. Put it out for the world to see. LP and X-Men to the 10th degree. It's going down. Nobody in the world is safe when we melt down the wax in your record cream. X-Men about to blast off worldwide.